Welcome back to Honest News. You think I was kidding, folks, about Trump taking over the Fed? I'm telling you, it's already in the news. It's Trump's Fed now. See, with all these seats, these vacancies available, Trump will have a shot at molding the central bank. Okay? So Trump is going to basically be controlling the Fed at his direction. It took President Franklin D. Roosevelt a dozen years to turn over all the seats of the Federal Reserve's governing board. Donald Trump is in a position to name 5 governors in just 2 years, while elevating a 6th to the chairmanship. Markets are betting that Trump won't seize on this chance to reshape the nation's central bank in his own defiant image. So far, his picks have been mainstream, and he's refrained from berating the institution, which has been gradually raising interest rates to keep the U.S. economy from overheating. Of course, Trump could get more proactive with his 3 remaining board nominations, particularly if he wants to placate the populist anti-Fed wing of his own party, and if the Fed's rate-raising campaign seems to be thwarting his effort to make the economy grow faster, he could pivot against the Fed's leadership the same way he went after Chair Janet Yellen during his run for the presidency. Even if none of this happens, Trump's remaking of the Board of Governors is stripping it of decades of institutional experience. So, if Donald Trump gets control of the Fed, which he's poised to right now, he'll have not only control of the Fed, folks, but he'll have control of the police and the military. Okay? This is a dictatorship in the making. And as I just showed you in the previous video, that he is seeking to deregulate the big banks so they can offer all the money they want to, okay? With no stress tests, with no oversight, with no requirements. In other words, they can just open up the floodgates and give out all this free money. But it's not free. It's not free, right? Obviously. But when you tell people that they can have money, and just like a credit card, you offer somebody a credit card of money, say $5,000 limit, they're not going to think about the interest rate. They're not going to think about the fact they won't be able to pay it back, right? You know, if there's nothing in place that they could be thrown in jail, you know, when an institution is willing to loan money to people, think about it. It's not illegal to not pay your loan. That's not illegal. They actually take the risk in giving you that loan. Okay? So what happens when people can't repay their loans? Well, we saw what happened, right? All these junk, I don't know what word you want to use, but all these loans that don't get paid, basically, they end up somewhere, don't they? Where do they end up? They become debt. And who's going to pay that debt? This is nothing more, folks. Now, I told you this before. When big banks get a loan for somebody, they don't just get the money for that loan. That money for the loan goes to the person, but they get like, I don't remember how many times more the bank actually gets. So the Fed gives them, I don't think it's 10 times or something like that. So in other words, the person gets their loan, but the bank gets like 10 times the amount that that person gets. Think about that. That's free money. That is free money. And so when all these debts can't be paid, what happens? What happens? They get a bailout. The bailout comes. Because they start saying, the banks start saying, oh, everything's going to crash. Everything, it's, we need help, blah, 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 blah. Just like last time. And they get it. Because, our system in this country relies upon the big banks. Yeah. What would happen if all these banks would crash, or what would happen if they would all, what would happen if they go out of business? They make the people believe that if the banks fail, right, then the country fails. But that's just the opposite of the truth. We don't need the banks. But they make us believe we need the banks. Just like they make us believe that we need the Fed. See, it's the Fed and the big banks. Listen to me. It's the Fed and the big banks that stop this country from being a free enterprise country, from being a country of freedom. The banks, the Federal Reserve, is what actually puts the people in bondage. That's what puts us in bondage as a country. It's debt. It's debt, folks. And while you're in debt because you were given all this money, right? You're in debt. But they're released from any responsibility. They're released from any debt. And they get a free bailout. And now you say, well, they had to pay that back. Do you have proof? I have people say that to me. They say, the banks paid back that bailout. Do you have proof they paid it back? Or was that one of the biggest heists in U.S. history? It's one thing to be a bank robber, but what if you're the bank? What if Donald Trump is a Bonnie and Clyde situation here, folks? We're talking the mafia here. In the White House. I told you it was going to start with the thief, starting with he comes to steal. First he comes to steal, then kill, and then destroy. We are in the stage right now of the thief stealing, robbing you of everything. You know how they do that? They offer you money, right? And it's not so much those that have intelligence and know about variable rates and understand about high interest rates and have some intelligence to know that, hey, I may not be able to pay this back. But there are people in our country that are looking for a handout. You give them a $5,000 credit line or you give them money, they don't care about paying that back. In fact, they're not going to pay it back. But see, the banks know they're not going to pay it back. But the banks don't care because the banks get like 10 times the amount of that loan. And then what happens when they can't pay when the people can't pay this becomes debt that the people can't pay, and it becomes debt on the books of the banks. This is exactly what we saw last time. This is exactly what we saw. We're just, it's like we're going in a circle here. And no one's going to stop it. I look in the scripture and I see Israel for 40 years going around the same mountain, going in a circle. Folks, we're just going to keep going in a circle in this country, or is someone going to put a stop to this? Is somebody going to put a stop to this? It's insanity. Everybody's afraid of the Fed. They're afraid of their government. They're afraid. Trump knows that. He knows that. He knows you're afraid. He doesn't care. This is profiteering. When you look at the country and the stress that it's in right now, right? And you tell the big banks they can offer all this money to the people to help stimulate the economy, whatever, especially during Christmas, right? There are people in this country that don't care about giving. I know someone right now that was offered a business loan, okay? And he wasn't even a business. He was offered a business loan for $5,000. I believe it was $5,000. No, $50,000. It was $50,000. That's what it was. $50,000. The first thing he did with that check is he cashed it. You know what he did? He went and bought a car. And he is now driving a vehicle that's paid for. Okay? Paid for. That he never had to pay for. Free money. Never paid it back. How many others have done the same thing? Okay? Why would the bank give somebody all that money and then knowingly give that money to them and then knowingly to know that these people are not going to go to jail? These people are not going to in any way have to be pressured to give that money back. The only one thing that would force people to pay their bills or to pay is your credit score, right? Your credit standing. That's the only thing in this country. That's it. There's nothing else. Because when you get a loan from the bank and they give you that credit, they give you that loan, they're doing that on a trust basis. In other words, they're offering you that loan at their own risk. You're not subject to any criminal prosecution if you can't pay that back. You're not looked at as a criminal or anything. And the reason or a thief or anything, because they are the ones that took the risk. Are you listening? They took the risk. They offered you the money. But see, the Fed working with these big banks, the Fed prints money out of thin air to these banks every time they get a loan for somebody. So they don't care if you pay your loan or not. They could care less if you pay your loan. So you say, well, why would they care if your credit's good or not to get the loan? Well, when things are good, they do care, and they're not going to give you that loan. Why? Because they're controlling the economy. The big banks work with the Federal Reserve to control the economy, to control the flow of money in this country. It's not just the Fed. It's the big banks working along with the central bank. Are you listening? So, if you're offered a bunch of money in the next few months, turn it down. Bible says, be in debt to no man. Owe no man anything. This is what I was telling you, that people were going to start being offered free money, all kinds of money. Because there's nothing that makes you pay that back except you're afraid your credit score is not going to be good, right? It's going to destroy your credit score. But there are people in this country that don't care about their credit score. When you can't feed your family or you can't pay your bills, you don't care about your credit score. You just care about paying your bills. And they know that. And they're going to take full advantage of that. Because even if things go awry, even if there is a meltdown, they know they're going to get their bailout, just like they did last time. And I'm told, oh, they paid that back. No, they didn't. You really think the banks paid that back? That's what we want to believe. We don't want to believe that we're living in a country where big banks connected to the Federal Reserve get away with financial murder. We don't want to believe that. But they do. But they do. These big banks like JP Morgan, they're in bed with the Fed, folks. They're in bed with those that run the Fed, that control the Fed. And now Donald Trump is poised to run the Fed. That's right. Wow. It's just, what more can you say? Oh, no man anything. Get out of debt.